Picture this. You're sound asleep in your own home when suddenly FBI agents smash through your front door, detonate a flashbang grenade inside, drag you out in handcuffs, and hold your wife at gunpoint. The reason? They raided the wrong house. Now here's where it gets worse. When you try to hold the government responsible for this catastrophic mistake, they turn around and argue that you can't sue them. They claim they're completely immune from accountability. That's exactly what happened in a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court just issued a 9-0 unanimous decision in favor of the family. Let's break down what happened in this critical case and what comes next after this landmark ruling. Before we get started, if you want to support the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We're talking about a 9-0 unanimous ruling by the Supreme Court that every gun owner needs to know about. The case is Martin v. United States, and it stems from a 2017 incident in a suburban area outside Atlanta where the FBI executed a pre-dawn raid on the wrong home. The family living in that home sued the federal government under the Federal Tort Claims Act, known as the FTCA. The central question became, does the federal government get to walk away from liability, or can regular citizens hold them accountable the same way they could hold a private citizen accountable for breaking down the wrong door? The Supreme Court's 9-0 decision overturned the lower court's ruling and sent the case back for re-review, stating that the FBI could potentially be held accountable. However, the DOJ has managed to temporarily stall the case. FBI Special Agent Lawrence Guerra was leading a pre-dawn raid targeting a home where suspected gang members were believed to be hiding. The raid had a specific target address, but instead of verifying it properly, Agent Guerra used his personal GPS, most likely on his phone. When he entered the address into his GPS, it directed him to a completely different location, the home of Katrina Martin, where she lived with her boyfriend and their 7-year-old son. When the FBI team arrived, they smashed through the front door without warning, detonated flashbang grenades, found the boyfriend hiding in a closet and handcuffed him, pulled out Katrina Martin while she was half-dressed and held her at gunpoint, and pulled out the child as well. After the agents detained the entire family, they began searching the home. During that search, one of the agents noticed mail sitting on a coffee table. The address on that mail didn't match their target. That's when they realized they'd raided the wrong house. You can imagine the oh crap moment these FBI agents had when they understood what they'd just done. In response to this wrongful raid, the family sued the FBI under the Federal Tort Claims Act. This law allows ordinary citizens to sue the federal government for certain wrongful acts committed by federal employees while they're acting within the scope of their employment. Normally, the government is protected by qualified immunity and other types of immunities. But the FTCA is one area where the government has agreed to allow people to bring these types of claims in court. However, the FTCA comes with a long list of exceptions where you cannot sue the federal government or its employees. 2 of these exceptions became the focus of this case. First, the intentional tort exception. Generally, you can't sue the federal government for intentional wrongs like assault, battery, false arrest, or malicious prosecution. Second, the discretionary function exception. This exception shields the federal government from wrongful acts that result from an official making a discretionary decision, meaning a decision that involves judgment, choice, or policy considerations. When the family sued the FBI and its agents under the FTCA, the government claimed they were protected by these exceptions, specifically the discretionary function exception. The FBI argued that Agent Guerra's use of his personal GPS was a discretionary choice, and therefore he remained immune from liability. The family filed their lawsuit in federal district court in Georgia. The government moved to dismiss the case, arguing that both the intentional tort exception and the discretionary function exception prevented this type of lawsuit. The district court sided with the federal government and the FBI. The case then moved to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which also ruled in favor of the FBI. The family filed a petition for certiorari with the United States Supreme Court, and the court agreed to hear the case. After review, the Supreme Court issued a 9-0 unanimous ruling in favor of the family. Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote the unanimous opinion, which vacated the 11th Circuit's decision and sent the case back to the 11th Circuit for a new ruling based on their guidance. The Supreme Court held that the law enforcement proviso only modifies the intentional tort exception. It doesn't override all the other exceptions to the FTCA. This might sound like a technical legal point, but it's actually significant. The lower court had tried to apply a sort of blanket immunity, and the Supreme Court found serious problems with that approach. Based on this reasoning, the Supreme Court vacated the 11th Circuit's decision and remanded the case back to them for further consideration in light of this new ruling. Recently, the 11th Circuit ordered the federal government to file a supplemental brief outlining how the Supreme Court's 9-0 ruling will impact this case going forward. But the DOJ managed to get an extension. They currently have until November 21st to file their supplemental response. Their argument for needing extra time? The government shutdown is currently preventing them from working on the case. Regardless, the federal government will eventually have to respond to this new Supreme Court ruling and re-argue the case at the 11th Circuit level. You might be wondering what any of this has to do with gun owners. Here's why this case matters so much. Wrong house raids, mistaken identity arrests, and excessive force situations disproportionately affect law-abiding gun owners. This happens more often than it should, and there are numerous highly publicized cases where we've seen this play out. When these raids go wrong and gun owners are involved, someone is usually armed, whether it's the police officers, the gun owner, or both. The gun owner might act in self-defense, not knowing these are actually law enforcement officers. These mistakes can lead to deadly consequences. If the government can hide behind discretion every time it makes a mistake, there's no accountability. Not for the federal agency and not for the individual officers involved. The Supreme Court's ruling in Martin narrows the government's ability to avoid lawsuits by claiming this type of broad immunity. It reinforces the principle that federal agents can be held accountable when they recklessly invade someone's home or misuse their powers. That's what just happened in another significant 9-0 unanimous ruling from the Supreme Court, and that's how it's going to impact this case moving forward. The case is back in the hands of the 11th Circuit, where they'll re-review and re-rule on it. The 11th Circuit has ordered the DOJ to file a response addressing what happened at the Supreme Court level. They want a new brief based on that Supreme Court order. Right now, the federal agency has delayed that response because of the government shutdown, but they will have to respond to this new ruling. That's where things currently stand. As we get more information and developments, I'll keep you updated. If you want to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to subscribe. It helps the channel grow and reach more people. As always, thank you so much for all of your support.